And joining me live is Republican strategist John Jordan. John, let's start with Roe versus Wade and a very important bill in the Senate voted against this week.
Yeah, that was a show vote. Initially, the Democrats said they wanted to codify Roe v. Wade. And all Roe v. Wade does, by the way, is prevent states from really regulating abortion or outlawing it. The removal of Roe v. Wade, all it does is kick it back to the states. Now, the Democrats failed in that effort because, according to some of the Democrats that voted against it, they expanded Roe v. Wade to basically allow abortion pretty much under any circumstances. And currently, the United States is only one of 7 countries that really allows abortion up to the time of birth. The Democrats are in a little bit of a pickle here because 85% of Americans want some sort of restriction of abortion, and well over 70% say that after 15 weeks or viability that abortion should only be in very limited cases. So while Americans said to pollsters that we oppose Roe v. Wade being repealed, further questioning shows they didn't understand what it meant. They thought that removing Roe v. Wade just meant that abortion would be outlawed, which isn't true. So basically, when you remove Roe v. Wade, all it does is kick it back to the democratically elected legislatures elected by the people of the 50 states. So it's going to be interesting to see how it turns out.
It's an extraordinary subject, isn't it? The way that it grips the nation in the manner in which it has.
Yeah, it has. But if you look at survey after survey, across, many polls, Americans it's getting all the headlines in the United States, but it's not really what people care about. There's a growing disconnect about what the American media talks about and what the American public says is important to them. What they care about right now is inflation and cost of living and the economy. It's only 16%. And one survey said they really care about abortion that much at all. So again, the American media is kind of out of step with what is giving coverage to something that is not overly important to the American people.
Well, speaking about the American media, what about this comment from Jimmy Kimmel saying that it's almost, and he was speaking to Donald Trump in the latest book, almost unfathomable this imbecile ran this country?
Well, all he can say is that during 4 years of President Trump, we had less use of military force than the previous 3 presidents. We had peace. We had prosperity. We had low inflation. America was a net energy exporter. Things look awful good. So I'm not sure, what Jimmy Carter is talking about when comparing it to Joe Biden, who's plagiarized his speeches and can't even talk and is doing a hell of an impersonation of a dust puppet.
Well, that's interesting language there. That's almost quotable, John. Look, it is interesting and troubling, obviously, not only for the US, but we're seeing cost of living dramas here in Australia as inflation rise, interest rates go up. How is the perception of the current administration in and around the economy?
Well, look, all I can do is refer to polls rather than just offer opinions. Americans, by more than 2 to 1, disapprove of President Biden's handling of the economy. They blame him. They don't blame Putin because gas prices and inflation was on the rise before the invasion of Ukraine. America only imports about 2.5% of its oil from Russia. So that's not it. It's the headlong pursuit of the Green New Deal and radical environmental policies, which have driven up energy costs. And energy isn't pain at the pump. Energy goes into the making of everything from bread to steel to plastic. So energy costs find their way into the cost of every good and service that's consumed everywhere in the Western world. But energy costs were on their way up before, and we've been printing a huge amount of money and COVID relief and borrowing money that the American government just doesn't have, putting it on our credit card. So anybody that's even has a rudimentary command of economics understands that inflation is a necessary byproduct of this. And the only way to control it really is raising interest rates, which unfortunately will necessarily and almost certainly result in some form of a recession.
Vladimir Putin, look, I think for all now clear to see, is a blight on humanity. We're seeing Sweden, Finland, both now showing great enthusiasm to join NATO. And there's a number of things that have happened since the invasion of Ukraine, which is months ago now, is the unity shown not only by NATO but the rest of the world, which I don't think the president of Russia was expecting.
No, President Putin has kind of lived on an island, and he believed that 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 he could divide the West, and in fact, he's gotten the opposite. Russia is now not only weaker; they're perceived as being weaker. Their military is exhausted and been exposed. They couldn't subjugate Ukraine, and they don't really pose a conventional military threat to anybody else. And President Putin has managed to do what other American presidents have failed to do, and that is unify NATO and get NATO countries, like specifically Germany, to adhere to their commitments in terms of defense expenditures. Moreover, they've driven Sweden and Finland headlong into NATO, where for generations, the entire Cold War, they avoided it. Just a few months ago, another survey, 20% of Finns supported joining NATO. Now it's over 70%. I mean, that's quite an achievement if you're President Putin.